All right, so let's see what you guys thought about today's questions. Number one, why is Balthazar's song in the play? Why is there a song in the middle of the play? So let's take a look at this. So this is on page 234. This is the scene where the men trick Benedict into thinking that Beatrice likes him. But it's before that. It's before they start. So first, Don Pedro is like, I pray thee sing and let me woo no more. So like he's asking Balthazar to sing a song, right? Come Balthazar, we'll hear that song again. And then Balthazar sings, and then Don Pedro says, by my troth, a good song, which is basically what a good song. And then Benedict talks to himself, says, and he had been a dog that should have howled thus, they would have hanged him, and I pray God his bad voice bode no mischief. Which means if he had been a dog that sounded like this, the dog would have been killed. And I pray that Balthazar's bad voice will not cause more trouble. I has as lief have heard the night raven, come what plague could have come after it. I would have rather heard the night raven, which is a symbol of the plague, rather than hear more of Balthazar's singing. So Balthazar is a terrible singer. And so the song itself is actually one big joke, right? You see Don Pedro say, "Oh, please sing for us," and then Balthazar says, "Okay, I'll sing." And then he sings. The song itself is not bad, but he sings in such a terrible voice, and we all have to suffer for like 40 seconds while he works his way through the song. And then at the end, you can imagine there's a brief pause here while everybody comes to terms with what just happened. Don Pedro says, a good song. It's like he has no ears. He can't tell what is good singing, what is bad singing. Uh, and then Benedict finally points out what everybody knows, but nobody wants to say, which is that Balthazar is a terrible singer. So the whole thing is a big joke. Um, so it's part of the comedy. And so this big joke comes right before the more serious scene when the men trick Benedict. So it's kind of like what we call a palate cleanser. It washes away all of the other stuff to prepare us for what's coming next. It relaxes us so that we're ready to take in more information. Um, the group I talked to also focused on the contents of the song. So let's take a look. This song was in the movie, actually. I don't know if you noticed this, but the translator did not translate it into the subtitles. So we heard the song or a version of the song, but uh, we didn't see the words. Shakespeare's music is lost. We only have the words, but they were originally sung. It was music on stage. So all of the versions of Shakespeare songs that you hear today are just our best guess. We don't really know. Okay, the words. Sigh no more, ladies, sigh no more. Men were deceivers ever, which means always. So all men are liars. One foot in sea and one on shore, to one thing constant never. So this fits very well with Chinese, right? 脚踏两条船. And they're never faithful. Then sigh not so, but let them go, and be you blithe and bonny. So let them go. Again, fits well with Chinese. 放生吧. And be happy with yourself. Converting all your sounds of woe into hey nani nani. Hey nani nani doesn't mean anything. It's just a sound that means like joy and happiness and celebration. So, don't worry about these terrible men. Let them go and be happy. But then this group pointed out to me the second verse: sing no more ditties, sing no mo of dumps so dull and heavy. So no need to sing sad songs. The fraud of men was ever so since summer first was leavy. Yeah, all men are liars. Uh, and then the last two lines are the same, like a chorus. So it seems to be saying, forget about men, just be happy yourself. But it also recognizes that if you do want to get married, you're gonna have to take one of these men, right? It's be you, Blythe and Bonnie, yourself. So these lines seem to fit quite well with the themes of the play. Last week we saw that Beatrice thinks that Benedict tricked her into a relationship or something. So to her, he is one of these lying men. And then we also have like Don John, right? We will see, or we did see this week, Don John and Conrad are lying about Hero in order to get revenge on Don Pedro. And then finally, the way that they trick Benedict is also by telling lies about how Beatrice loves him and is like dying out of her love for him or something. But interestingly, in this play, it's not only the men who lie, right? Later, we're going to see this scene where the women trick Beatrice. So they're also lying. So it's not a gender thing. The song says it's men, but in the play, it's everybody. So it's the connection between like trickery and romance. And the chorus recommends that we should just be happy and forget about all of this sad stuff, which I guess could also be a message to the characters and also the audience. Like, don't worry, it's a comedy. Don't worry about it. They're going to get together at the end. So that's some of the reasons why we have this song in the middle of the play. You guys have other thoughts or questions about this one? Now, okay, let's move on to number two, Benedict's reinterpretation of Beatrice's words. So this is after Benedict has been tricked. He now believes that Beatrice loves him. He just gave a really stupid soliloquy about how he's going to behave toward Beatrice in the future. Like, he's saying like, "Oh, I used to be so mean to her, but she loves me so much. How can I be mean to her? No, I must treat her well." Just so incredibly stupid. Okay. Uh, and then Beatrice comes. I believe Don Pedro has asked her to, could be Don Pedro, could be Leonardo. Don Pedro has asked Beatrice to ask Benedict to come in to lunch. Dinner means lunch. In those days, dinner was called supper and lunch was called dinner. Okay, so Beatrice, against my will, I am sent to bid you come in to dinner. Benedict, fair Beatrice, I thank you for your pains. Pains means efforts. Beatrice, I took no more pains for those thanks than you take pains to thank me. If it had been painful, I would not have come. Benedict, you take pleasure then in the message? Beatrice, ye, which means yes, just so much as you may take upon a knife's point and choke a daw withal. So when Benedict says, so you liked delivering this message to me? And Beatrice says, yes, as much as I liked it if someone had stuck a knife in my throat, which means no. You have no stomach, senor, fare you well. So this has two meanings. One is you're not hungry, and the other one is um, you don't want to talk to me. You don't have a good temper with me. Fare you well, farewell, goodbye. Okay, So she leaves, and then Benedict says to himself, "Ha! Against my will, I am sent to bid you come in to dinner. There's a double meaning in that." So the first question here is, what's the double meaning? And I was talking with a group about this question, and we think that the original meaning, of course, is Beatrice doesn't want to talk to Benedict. But why doesn't she want to talk to him? On the surface, it's because she hates him. But if Benedict believes that Beatrice loves him, and the men previously said, like, she's afraid to let Benedict know, otherwise Benedict might mock her, then the reason here could be she doesn't want to tell him anything. She doesn't want to talk to him. She's afraid that he will break her heart. Or like she knows he doesn't like her, so she doesn't want to see his face and be reminded of the fact that he doesn't like her. And then the second piece of evidence, I took no more pains for those things than you took pains to thank me. That's as much as to say, any pains that I take for you is as easy as thanks. So Beatrice is saying, I used no more effort than you used effort to thank me, which means I didn't use any effort at all. But Benedict is saying that used no effort because it's such an easy and happy thing for her to do, right? Is as easy as thanks. It's no obstacle. It's not something that would take much effort from her. It's very easy. She looks forward to doing this. So this sentence is an equal sign, right? Comparing the effort of inviting him to dinner versus the effort of thanking her for the invitation. And Beatrice is saying there's no effort on either side at all. And Benedict is saying, oh, that's because both sides, we did this very happily. We were very willing to do it. It took no effort at all. So, like, does this make sense? That's the question. And I talked with this group, and they said, logically speaking, yeah, the sentences could be interpreted in these ways. And then psychologically, he is able to do this because he has a different assumption about what Beatrice feels. And isn't that often the case with language between people who may or may not like each other? Like, if you have a crush on somebody and they send you a very short text message, and you might spend some time thinking, what do they mean? Do they like me? Do they not like me? Is it short because they don't like me? Is it short because they like me too much and they don't know what to say? Is it short because they're just busy? What's going on? Right? So this is kind of what's going on here. Beatrice says things because she doesn't like him, but Benedict, assuming that she likes him, is able to put those ideas into the language. We often think of language as the way to communicate, and that's true. But language can also be a barrier to communication. The medium is the barrier. 媒介就是阻碍. Okay, other thoughts about this one? All right, moving on. Number 3, the two manipulation scenes. So if we, okay, I'm gonna go through this question very fast because it's a big question. In both scenes, a group of people talk about the other person so that the first person can hear, and they say that the other person loves the first person very much, but because the first person doesn't love the other person, so the other person does not or should not want to let the first person know that they like them. And in the middle, like, how do they know that the other person likes the first person? They hear it from somebody else. Apparently, there is some physical evidence, uh, and they always blame the first person for being too mean, so that the other person is not willing to try to confess their love to the first person. So the whole structure is very similar. The one difference, however, see if we can find this. The one major difference, I should say. Uh, okay, so so this is the scene where they're tricking Benedict. This is page 235. 127, Don Pedro says, "Has she made her affection known to Benedict?" So did Beatrice let Benedict know that she loves him? Leonato, no, and swears she never will. That's her torment. She'll never let him know. Claudio, "'Tis true indeed. So your daughter says," Hero says. "Shall I," says she, "that have so oft encountered him with scorn, write to him that I love him? So I've argued with him so many times, and now I'm going to tell him I love him?" Skip a few lines. 157, Don Pedro. "It were good that Benedict knew of it by some other, if she will not discover it. So if Beatrice won't tell him, somebody should tell him." Claudio, "To what end? He would make but a sport of it and torment the poor lady worse." "Why? Why should anyone tell him? He would just mock Beatrice and make her suffer more." So for Benedict, they say that Beatrice voluntarily does not tell him. She does not want him to know. But if we go to the tricking Beatrice scene, oh, we skipped it. Um, Here, this is page 237. They have just said that Benedict loves Beatrice. Ursula here says, "And did they, the men, bid you tell her of it, madam?" So did the men ask you, Hero, to tell Beatrice that Benedict loves her? And Hero says, "They did entreat me to acquaint her of it." So yes, they did ask me to tell her, but I persuaded them, if they loved Benedict, to wish him wrestle with affection and never to let Beatrice know of it. So Hero says, "But I told the men, never let Beatrice know that Benedict loves her." Um, and the reason is here. Nature never framed a woman's heart of prouder stuff than that of Beatrice. Disdain and scorn ride sparkling in her eyes. Skip a few lines. "She cannot love." Blah, blah, blah. So the reason is the same, right? Because Beatrice would never love Benedict. The difference is that apparently the men and Benedict want to tell Beatrice in this story. Whereas in the earlier story, Beatrice and the women did not want to tell Benedict. So the picture we get is that the men are like more impulsive, whereas the women are more internally suffering. And this is important because these two stories use stereotypes about gender and love in order to convince the person. So apparently, this is the kind of behavior that was more expected of men and more expected of women at the time. Okay, other thoughts about this one? Sorry, I know it's a little confusing because like who are we talking about? But like if you go back and read these sections, it will make more sense. Number 4. Do you agree when Margaret says this thing? Let's take a closer look. Here. Okay, so Margaret is serving Hero. They are preparing for the wedding night. They're talking about the outfits. Hero says, line 23, God give me joy to wear it, for my heart is exceeding heavy. Heavy usually means worried, but here it means anxious, nervous. So she's saying, wow, I'm so nervous. And then Margaret says, "'Twill be heavier soon by the weight of a man," which means, you're going to have sex with your new husband soon. So she's playing on the word heavy. Hero says, "Fie upon thee, art not ashamed?" Basically, like, you shouldn't say these words or say such a thing. And Margaret says, "Of what, lady? Of speaking honorably? If I say the truth and say it sincerely, why should I be ashamed?" And this is her idea. "And bad thinking do not rest true speaking. I'll offend nobody. If sexual words or sexual thinking does not distort honest speaking, then I will or should not offend anyone." In other words, as long as I am honest and sincere and truthful, the language that I use and the ideas that I say should not be considered offensive. So I was talking with a group about this idea, and they said, you know, on the surface, this idea makes a lot of sense, right? You want to hear honest words and honest ideas, no matter the language. But in this context, what are the honest ideas that Margaret is saying? Is she, in fact, giving some kind of advice? No, she's just joking, right? Like this sentence does not have any important information. It's purely joking around. So the idea that as long as I'm honest, it will not or should not be offensive. It's a good defense, but it's not a defense of what Margaret is actually doing. It's like more like an excuse or a rationalization, a self-justification. Okay, other thoughts? All right, last one. Why do Dogberry and Verges beat around the bush? This is not the first time we have met them. We know that, as the group I talked with noticed, that Dogberry thinks of himself as more important or more educated than he actually is. That's why he keeps using big words and using them wrongly. So that's the kind of person he is. And in this scene, they are going to talk to Leonato. Leonato, of course, is a very important guy, a nobleman. You have to remember, in those days, the difference between a commoner and a nobleman was not just about wealth or power. People in those days literally thought that these were two different kinds of person, physically, morally. Like today, we live in a democracy. Even if someone comes from a more prominent background, we still think they should have the same rights and duties as every other citizen. But in those days, that was not the case. They literally thought that nobles were better and more important. One description of this attitude is that if you meet a high enough noble, it's kind of like meeting a lower god. And in this case, in this play, Leonato is the second highest noble right after Don Pedro. So Dogberry is just a regular citizen. And so, as the group I talked with pointed out, the reason he keeps circling around the point, apparently, is because he's very nervous. Meeting this noble, he has important information. Also, he tries to present himself as more important and educated. He has so many things going on in his mind, he can't even talk straight. And it's up to Verges to deliver the key information. Have had taken a couple of as errant knaves as any in Messina. If you can't tell, this is have taken, or has taken, I guess. Hath taken. Our watch is singular. So that's the psychology. Well, what about the design of the play? Why does Shakespeare have them behave like this? So, as the group noticed, this is supposed to be comedy. It's funny. All right, we see Dogberry try to be a better person than he actually is, and he keeps making a fool of himself. But at the same time, there is a second emotion in this scene, which is they have important information. Hero is just about to get married. Leonato needs this information now. Uh, so there's a sense of urgency here. So Dogberry and Verges have the information. They're trying to give it to Leonato, but because Dogberry is such a self-important fool, he fails to communicate the information. So it's comedy acting as uh, like a cap on a high pressure situation. It's comedy as frustration. 用中文讲会让我们很急。Um, so like by combining the character of Dogberry with the situation in this scene, a very short scene, Shakespeare can make us feel a very specific emotion, right? We pray, we hope, we urge that he can get that information out in time to save Hero's marriage. Um, and the fact that the obstacle is a comedy and not something more serious just makes us feel like it's even more urgent. It's not a serious barrier. It's not a serious obstacle. Just like let Dogberry shut up and let Verges deliver the message, please. Okay, other thoughts about today's discussion? Okay, before next week, please finish the play. And then the week after that, we're going to watch the movie of the last play.